The ultra-right-wing elements of the Israeli government have called for a permanent Israeli presence in northern Gaza, more than hinting, that a potential settlement building and annexation is on the cards. Do you see the Israeli occupation seriously considering this course to stay?
Well, Mark, my experience has taught us to take those kinds of pledges very seriously, especially considering the formation of the current Israeli government. You're talking about ministers who have basically a record in membership of terrorist organizations, but according to the U.S. State Department, not according to even the United Nations, but such as the Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, or the Israeli Finance Minister, Bezalel Smotrich. I mean, these are just the top well-known too, but there are other many members of this current government, such as the Minister of Heritage and Culture. I mean, they all make these kinds of statements calling for, expulsion of Palestinians, displacing them, if not starvation. And they find this very illegal under the allegation of protecting Israel's security. I mean, again, to go back to the issue of the ceasefire talks, one of the key obstacles for the success of those talks are the Israeli plans on the ground, besides all the other threats to resettle Gaza. I mean, the satellite images that have been obtained and published in the U.S. Media imply that Israel has expanded its presence in northern Gaza as well as in the middle parts of Gaza, so-called the Sarim crossing point. Again, as well as strengthening their presence along the border between Egypt and Gaza, and placing more fortifications. So the facts on the ground, I mean, even before the ambitions to resettle in Gaza, which reflect the extreme kind of partners in their coalition government, we have all indications on the ground that Israel does not plan on the short term to pull out its troops from Gaza. And that's one reason Hamas is always skeptical about the promises that let's accept a temporary ceasefire for like 42 days, and then we'll see what we're going to do. I mean, of course, they cannot trust the Israelis, especially with action on the ground.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, I just wanted to ask you, Mr. Dawoud, sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to ask you about the role of the U.S., because the U.S. has played a key role in negotiations, but it's also vetoed numerous UN ceasefire resolutions, which everybody else has voted in favor of. How do you see the U.S.'s involvement, especially as it continues to support Israel's war on Gaza?
Well, indeed, Mark, I mean, the issue has not been limited to the political support or diplomatic support of the United Nations vetoing one resolution after the other calling for a ceasefire. But more important is the amount of weapons that the Americans have been providing the Israelis since the beginning of this war. You're talking about $22 billion. I mean, in a matter of like 6 months that the current U.S. administration, I mean, has been providing Israel with, and at the same time claiming that they are very much actively involved in the negotiations. Well, I'm sure you're following, I mean, lots of calls around the world, including some European nations such as France or even Britain, saying that the only way to pressure Israel to stop this madness, to stop those war crimes in Israel, is to place some sort of an embargo on providing Israel with those kinds of weapons it uses on a daily basis to kill the Palestinians. So the U.S. administration is in such a hypocritical situation. And we've even seen, like, for the first time in U.S.-Israeli history relations, 20 U.S. senators, or exactly to be exact, 19 U.S. senators, led by Senator Bernie Sanders, the independent, calling for a halt in the shipments of weapons to Israel, saying they're being used to commit war crimes, along with the confessions made by the former Israeli defense minister, which caused a lot of debate in Israel recently, Mr. Moshe Ya'alon, who openly and bluntly said that Israel is committing ethnic cleansing in Gaza, and the so-called allegations about the most moral army in the world is nothing but, unfortunately, BS, basically, let's put it this way. Because, I mean, there is no morality of whatsoever kind in killing children and killing women and bombing hospitals. So, I mean, the Americans, they offer lip service on the desire to stop the war, but at the same time, they refrain from using the main leverage they have, which is the weapons they provide Israel with in order to stop this war. But However, I think that after 14 months, this war has exhausted itself. There's this new president coming in, President Trump, and perhaps, I mean, Mr. Biden does not want to leave the White House with the title of Joe Genocide stuck to his name. So hopefully this creates maybe a little bit of a glimmer of hope that there might be some serious effort by the United States to stop this crazy war against the Palestinian people in Gaza in the near future.
Well, thank you very much for those words. Well, both of you, in fact. Khaled Dawoud, the managing editor of Al Ahram Weekly, and also Jihad El Harazin, who is a professor of international